So, do the Boston Bruins need to make a trade? Now, three straight losses, whether it be in overtime or shootout, they've gotten close, but have not really been able to get it over the goal line and win a game. Now, the Bruins haven't played horrific by any stretch of the imagination, but it's these last three games and just throughout the season that makes you want a little bit more from this team. This video is going to be a little bit different, not really any editing, just kind of spitballing my honest to God opinion on the team as we sit. The Bruins have one of the best tandems in the NHL with Ullmark and Swayman. Now, Ullmark's dinged up. Hopefully he'll be back soon. Bussy got recalled and he'll be the backup for the foreseeable future. But there is some questions. I mean, do you really allow yourself such a luxury when you have holes in other parts of your team? I think the conversation around Swayman this season is that he's taken another step and he looks like he will be that bona fide number one that the Bruins will need for many, many years to come. He has looked fantastic. He looks more confident, and I am completely fine with him being the bona fide number one starter for the Boston Bruins. And they have some good goaltending in the pipeline. Bussy, who's had a little bit of a down year with the Providence Bruins, but Bussy, DiPietro's, he's salvaged his career. He's actually looked really good for the Providence Bruins. There's some talent that I think could be fine in a backup role at the NHL level, but the only reason I'd even move Ullmark is I'm getting a great player in return. So who would be on the market and what should we be trying to acquire? Funny enough, center is the position I've wanted throughout this whole time and still do. That'd be my ideal spot. I wouldn't be mad at the Bruins if they acquired another good top four defenseman. Hampus Lindholm, we do have him signed for a while, and he's got a pretty good cap hit. He has not played like his usual self. I think maybe I'm a little bit too optimistic in this. I think he'll eventually bounce back. I don't know if something's bugging him. He just doesn't seem sure of himself, or maybe it's just a down year. But he still has a lot of talent in him. I think he'll be able to eventually turn around. You have Charlie McAvoy. You have Brandon Carlo, who was just put on IR. But, Brandon Carlo, he's a steady defensive defenseman. That what you need. But when you look at the other pieces of this team, I think Shattenkirk, Witherspoon, whoever you want to put in that bottom pairing, they've been okay. I think we would probably benefit from getting an upgrade over a guy like Grzelcyk. I know people are very high on the rookie Lorine, but in a deep playoff run, it's a lot to ask a rookie to be shut down. They're still developing at the NHL level. We might have to look at some type of an upgrade there on the back end with Grzelcyk. I think he looked better in that Vegas game, and he had a really good year last year, but I think you could maybe move him. What I'm going on to say is I wouldn't even be mad if the Bruins decided to go acquire themselves another defenseman. But ideally, I think we are missing another piece up front. I think we're just another piece shy. And who is out there that you could get? Well, you got, and this is Montreal, so I know it's a little controversial. You got yourselves, Sean Monahan. He's having himself a decent year in Montreal. Maybe he's somebody you can acquire. I know the Canadians aren't having a great year. I know Lindholm, a guy from Calgary, is somebody that has been talked about for a long time in Bruins circles as somebody they could go acquire, plug and play into a top six role up front. I think that could be ideal. And if you're going to talk defensemen, staying with that same team, Noah Hannafin, he becomes a UFA at the end of this year. You could, have Calgary retain half and make something work. But Calgary, I'm not sure if they're going to want to sell right now. They're still in the conversation there in the Western Conference. So that we'll have to kind of see how things play out. But with how the Bruins are completely structured right now, I don't look at them as a Stanley Cup contender. Yes, they're first in the Atlantic with the Florida Panthers being right on their heels, but there's a lot of holes in this roster. There's a lot of holes on this roster to really go on a deep Stanley Cup run. I think they have good young talent. I just don't think they're ready yet for that stage, and maybe I could be proven wrong, but I'm just watching this team. They're so good. in times, but then in other games they're not able to bury it. I think, bringing another piece would be huge. And some people will argue, and I've made videos about this. I think about a couple months ago, the Bruins making a trade to trying to upgrade and become a little bit more well-rounded. Some people will mention, well, some of that dead cap, like with Krejci and Bergeron, that's going to go away next year. You're going to gain some cap space with the cap going up as well. And you're going to have more flexibility to bring in guys the next couple seasons instead of just trying to buy for a rental and keep trading future assets, which I agree with, actually. I don't think that's a bad plan, but, I'm speaking more in the ideal world. If the Bruins did want to make a deep Stanley Cup run, either you bring in Bergeron out of retirement, or you're just accepting that this year they'll be a good team, but they just probably won't have enough to get over the top. They won't have enough there. And maybe that's a little bit too harsh. You look at some of these teams that they're playing. I mean, they just lost to Vegas in overtime, so it's not like they're getting blown out. Before that, they lost to a playoff team in Arizona. Then before that, in overtime, and then they lost to the Colorado Avalanche in a shootout. These are very good teams they're beating, and they beat some solid teams, but when I look at the Bruins, I look at them as missing a piece or two from really being that contender. Could they win a series or two? I think that's possible. I just think we're asking a lot of these guys, like Lohrei, Patra, like we're asking a lot from our youth, and generally that doesn't really pan out into playoff success, at least in my personal opinion. So if the Bruins are going to be in a buy now window, I do think making a trade would be smart. But I wouldn't be mad at Don Sweeney if he decides to, like, hey, we're going to have more cap flexibility going forward. The cap's going to go up as well. We'll be able to bring another piece to kind of slot in alongside, whether it be Pastrnak or, Zucker or whatever. There's going to be some good potential here going forward. We're just going to have to kind of deal with what we have and see what the boys and how far they can bring the team. But I'd like to know your thoughts, actually, on this whole subject. Do you believe the Bruins should make a trade? Or should they hold pat, see how things play out, and realize, like, hey, we got some potential in the future to, add some pieces and become even more dangerous? I'd love to know your thoughts down below in the comment section. So I'm Captain Paul. I'll see you in the next one.